Welcome to Day 7 of the Sovereignty Protocol. You have arrived at the final defining threshold of this journey. Over the past 6 days, you have engaged in an uncompromising, systematic war to reclaim total authority over your mind, your nervous system, and your destiny. Look back at the operational terrain you have conquered. On Day 1, we exposed the silent biological heist of low-effort dopamine and reclaimed your neurochemical engine. On Day 2, we audited the silent tax on your sovereignty, facing the true compounding cost of broken promises and lost cognitive capital. On Day 3, we mapped your trigger architecture with forensic precision, bringing your invisible behavioral loops into the light. On Day 4, we deployed the friction barrier protocol, outsmarting temptation by physically and digitally restructuring your environment. On Day 5, we mastered transmutation, learning how to hijack the explosive raw energy of cravings and funnel it straight into building your empire. And yesterday, on Day 6, you learned to navigate the flat line, standing cold, stoic, and unshakable in the gray room, while your dopamine receptors updated their hardware. You have proven that you possess the tactical capacity to break the chains of compulsion. But today, on Day 7, we face the final highest stakes challenge, ensuring that this victory is not a temporary anomaly, but a permanent, unassailable shift in your reality. Today, we erect the Unbreakable Standard. If you analyze the long-term failure rates of individuals who attempt to overcome addictions, vices, or deeply ingrained behavioral flaws, you will discover a tragic, recurring trap. Millions of people successfully manage to abstain from a vice for 30, 60, or 90 days through massive willpower and environmental changes. But as soon as the initial crisis passes and life settles back into a routine, they slowly drift back into relapse. Why does this happen? Because they treated the process as a temporary diet, a short-term sprint, or a 30-day challenge. They operated under the assumption that once they achieved a certain period of sobriety or discipline, they could safely loosen their grip, dismantle their protocols, and return to normal. But you must understand this fundamental truth. Your old definition of normal is the exact environment and mindset that created your addiction in the first place. You cannot return to the baseline that broke you and expect to remain whole. Freedom from addiction is not a temporary destination you reach. It is a permanent identity transformation. To secure permanent sovereignty, you must execute a complete shift in how you define yourself at the deepest levels of your subconscious mind. Psychologists and behavioral economists have long documented the power of identity-based habits. When an individual views themselves as someone who is trying to quit a vice, every encounter with temptation becomes a painful, agonizing negotiation. Their internal dialogue whispers, "I really want that cheap dopamine, but I'm on a protocol, so I'm not allowed to have it." They are viewing the vice as a precious reward that they are denying themselves, keeping their nervous system in a state of perpetual deprivation and conflict. The sovereign operator operates on a completely different psychological plane. They do not say, "I am trying to avoid that." They state with cold, absolute finality, "That is simply not who I am." Look at the profound difference between those two stances. The first person is a prisoner attempting to resist their warden through continuous willpower. The second person has completely eradicated the warden's authority by evolving into a higher version of themselves. When an action contradicts your core identity, execution becomes effortless because there is nothing left to negotiate. An elite athlete does not spend 2 hours every morning arguing with themselves over whether to eat a toxic meal before a championship game. It is simply excluded from their identity. A sovereign mind does not negotiate over whether to waste 3 hours on cheap digital noise or indulge in a destructive vice. It is fundamentally incompatible with their personal code. To cement this identity shift, you can no longer rely on vague good intentions or flexible goals. You must establish a formal, written personal code, an explicit set of non-negotiable operating standards that govern your daily existence. Your personal code must clearly define your boundaries across 3 critical operational domains. First, environmental and digital hygiene. You must define the permanent rules for your relationship with technology and your space. What are the strict, non-negotiable cut-off times for your screens at night? Where does your phone reside when you are executing deep work or resting? What specific content, platforms, or inputs are permanently banned from entering your nervous system? Second, physical and biological maintenance. You must treat your physical body as the primary engine of your empire. What is your non-negotiable daily standard for physical movement, nutrition, and sleep hygiene? A leak in physical discipline is a direct attack on your cognitive pipeline. When your physical vessel is strong, optimized, and disciplined, your resistance to cheap dopamine spikes exponentially. Third, procedural accountability and corrective action. You must establish immediate, predetermined protocols for moments when your standards are threatened or breached. If a friction barrier fails or an unexpected trigger slips through your defenses, you do not rationalize, indulge in self-pity, or ignore the leak. You execute immediate surgical corrective protocols, doubling your friction barriers, increasing your physical transmutation output, and re-auditing your environment within the hour. You are the CEO, the supreme commander, and the central bank of your own life. Stop running your daily operations like a failing enterprise that tolerates continuous losses, broken promises, and compromised standards. Fire the weak, passive internal voices that keep making excuses for your mediocrity. Reallocate every ounce of your liberated cognitive capital into the aggressive pursuit of excellence, the acquisition of rare skills, the building of real wealth, and the cultivation of an untouchable mind. The world wants you weak, pacified, hyper-stimulated, and dociled, because a dociled consumer is easy to monetize and control. When you reclaim your focus, master your chemistry, and enforce an unbreakable standard, you become dangerous to the matrix of cheap distraction. You become truly sovereign. This 7-day protocol was not just a lesson, it was your initiation. The tools are now in your hands, the map is drawn, the friction barriers are set, the transmutation pipeline is open, the standard is established. Step into the arena, protect your baseline with paranoid reverence, enforce your code without mercy, and own your path